Seattle and Vancouver have inaugural season jerseys, plus it's almost time to get ready for the Rivalry Series.
This is the Women's Hockey Report presented by Locked On NHL. Your weekly look at the world of women's hockey. From the PWHL to the international stage, it's the Women's Hockey Report on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, women's hockey fans. Welcome to another Saturday episode of the Women's Hockey Report, brought to you by the Locked On NHL channel and the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you your favorite team, or in this case, your favorite women's hockey news every single Saturday. Erica L. Ayala here, also your host of Locked On Kraken, alongside Rachel Donner, who you will see on the Friday episode of Locked On NHL right here on this same channel, whether you're listening audio or viewing on YouTube. Also the co-host of Locked On Flyers. And, you know, the Kraken and the Flyers, well, we know who won that round. So congrats to Philly.
Listen, followed it up by a nice loss in Ottawa. So, you know,
there you go.
Say.
Yeah. And the Kraken got back on track ahead of what will be a nice little homestand. But anyway, enough about the boys. We're here to talk women's hockey. And we're going to start with the news of new jerseys, not the state, but the clothing item. The Seattle Kraken and Vancouver teams, I said Seattle Kraken, the Seattle and Vancouver teams have unveiled, Rachel, their jerseys for the inaugural season. Now, there's a lot to say about this and the announcement and all of that, but we do have jerseys. So there's that. And, you know, I guess just initial thoughts on, you know, the jerseys and do you have one that is an early favorite for you?
I mean, I certainly do love the Seattle colors. I think they're great. And I really liked that sky blue, like accent color they added to the mix. I think it really pops nicely. And, you know, I think like the sort of bronzy, coppery color they added to Vancouver is really good as well. But those colors do remind me of a classic Washington Capitals jersey. Yes. At some point in terms of the color. So that was like a weird association for me. And I feel like the Seattle one is a little bit more unique.
Yeah, I would think so as well. Yeah, that was something we talked about it with on Locked On Kraken with Joe Dabney, who is from the Washington, D.C. area. We definitely had that same thought. I liked that jersey kind of colorway though for the Caps, and I really
did, yeah.
Vancouver.
And I lived in D.C. when they had them.
Oh,
so
there you go.
I do remember them.
It's a throwback. Fondly. I mean, the cream looks really good against, like you said, that brown bronze, like, and the blue that they picked, I think is great. I will say it was a different look for both teams than I was expecting based on what we now know, and we'll get into that soon, as the placeholder logos. Well, I guess we always knew they were placeholder logos, but the colors are not exactly the same blue and green that we saw in the respective logos. I'm not miffed by it. It was a surprise for me that they weren't the same.
Yeah, and I think there's something to that, and I think it's partially because of fabric availability for jerseys, and that sometimes you can't match exact colors the way you want. I do like the logo colors that we originally got in the initial announcement a lot more for sure, but I think it's just softer in a way, and these are kind of more, they're just harsher colors.
Yeah, and not in a bad way. It's just
right
type stuff. We did have Ava also, who's contributed and will contribute to the Women's Hockey Report at that event in Seattle, and she did say that the colors look a little bit different in person than they do, at least as they appear visually in imaging. But that goes to, and we talked about this, I know even from playing college sports, that we would have like our colors were maroon and gold, but our jerseys were effectively red, like a really deep kind of brick red. And it goes to what you were talking about. The colors are often decided for uniforms based on what they'll look like on television. I found out in college. So yeah, that could be it. But another thing is that those logos, Rachel, those patch logos are nowhere to be found on these jerseys. Now, there's a few things, again, that we're going to talk about with regard to these jerseys. For those watching on YouTube, I'm going to pull this up again so you can see the full or part of the press release. These are the home and away jerseys. The cream for each team will be away, and the darker colors will be home. Now, this is what a lot of people, myself included, Rachel, found interesting. Each sweater features the city's name stitched diagonally across the front, paying homage to the designs worn by the PWHL's inaugural 6 teams in the league's first season. Now, let's stop there just for a quick second, because for me, Rachel, I was never beholden to just because the original 6 teams did that, which I think was more out of necessity and trying to get the league up than like an actual choice. I never thought that it's like, oh, well, every expansion team has to go through just being PWHL insert city name in their first year. But
right.
Like, that might be what we're getting, question mark?
Yeah, I don't like it. And, you could look at the NHL side of things and say Utah did that for a season before they had a name, but that was a completely different circumstance with a pretty quick turnaround for that relocation and not a lot of runway there. And I think it made sense. But if you're a league like the PWHL and you're having a planned expansion process, this is not a relocation. This is a planned expansion process.
RFPs.
Yeah, you need to have the runway and the lead time to be able to do every single step. And I think that, if they weren't already in knee deep in the process of getting brand legal approvals, by the time the initial announcement came out that the teams were going to exist, it was already too late.
Yeah. And again, I know a lot of people are like, well, the first teams did it, or they probably didn't have this, or they probably didn't have that. I don't know. Then maybe figure out a timeline that works. Now, again, I don't think you need to have every expansion team because, again, we talked about this a few weeks ago, but news has also started to cycle that there are going to be 4 more expansion teams in the next 2 years. So 2 that would join next year and 2 the season after, at least per reports that we're seeing. So then that means that, again, 4 more cities are just going to be PWHL anywhere, North America. And I just think that please, just unveil the whole brand identity, because the other part of this, Rachel, and it's in the press release itself. The press release goes on to say Seattle and Vancouver will officially reveal team identities, including names and logos, prior to the season beginning, which will be incorporated into the on-ice uniforms for the 26-27 season. So you're telling us that this season, you're going to announce and unveil their full logo identities, but they won't be using those identities? I mean, make it make sense.
Yeah, and the only little supposition that I have is based on, what we saw from this jersey launch, that we have the PWHL logo on one shoulder and that there could be room to put that logo as a patch on the other shoulder.
Yeah.
And that's the only theory I've got right now in terms of how they could incorporate it this season and then go full on the following season.
Yeah, I think that's likely what we're going to see, for the same reason that we said, hey, no logo with the kind of placeholder, or no patch with the placeholder logo. Maybe that's to unveil this. But again, if you already have that, they said they're going to unveil it before the start of the season. The season starts in less than a month. So is that ready? Is it is the logo and name done? Or are we still waiting? How long does it take to make a patch? I don't know. Is it for opening day puck drop, or I don't know. I just find that odd. I will say some people are like, well, if given the chance, that kind of diagonal style is very nostalgic for hockey fans, and some people like it, and I do think it looks good. It looks pretty sharp for the most part. If you don't like the New York Rangers, then maybe that's not your favorite style. But as a New Yorker, I grew up as a New Yorker, I grew up definitely not going to hockey games. I'm an adult hockey fan, but I grew up seeing those jerseys is what I'm saying. So it does have, again, it's very hockey in its aesthetic. But here's the thing, Rachel. Why not, if this is, as some people on the interwebs have maybe deduced or alluded to, if this is more about a cash grab, I promise you that if you were to unveil these as the kind of, this is what we wear in the inaugural season, but then also, since you already have the name and logo and jersey design in theory, if you drop those and have people buy them to be ready for next season, like, I feel like it's still a win. If everything's going to be announced, to just like let people throw money at you.
Yeah. And I was looking at the store because I was trying to suss out what they could possibly do. And when you go to buy one of these jerseys, it says item will ship in 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, that means that they can't necessarily add that patch onto this initial shipment, but it doesn't mean they can't later down the road.
That's also, if you're looking to buy a jersey, keep that in mind. Rachel's doing some sleuthing. Also, because we talked about this on the Kraken show, I didn't realize that apparently you can't buy the cream jerseys.
No, not yet. You can only buy the home ones.
Well, maybe by the time that you can buy the cream jerseys, the logos and team names will be announced and the patch will be ready, because I would put both of those in my cart, no questions asked, like yesterday.
And I would say, especially for Vancouver, I like the cream one a little bit better.
It's really
clean. It's pretty. It's really pretty.
It's so freaking pretty. I would have to, I would buy it and never wear it because I make a mess just breathing. But but those are so clean. So mixed results, not about the design. I think they nailed it. I really do. Yeah. The colors are great.
If they were going diagonal, love it.
Love it. Going back to Seattle again, we talked about this on the Kraken show. Some people were like, oh, the light blue kind of reminds me of the Kraken. Honestly, as someone who looks at the Kraken logo at least 5 days a week, it did not scream Kraken to me. And I liked that. But then when I put it up against the Locked On Kraken, backdrop, I was like, oh, that's kind of that light blue, it works, but they do it in a much different way, which I like. It's like, if you wanted to make that connection, you could, but you don't necessarily, it's not hitting you over the head. I like that. The Vancouver being, it's just, if you know about that Capitals jersey, I don't know how you don't at least think about it. It is what it is. We know that there's no connection there, but if it ain't broke as far as colors looking super clean together, why fix it? And I think Vancouver snatched up a really nice color palette, to be honest.
They did. And, the proof's in the pudding. Like, a lot of the sizes are already sold out. So
yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, I know our Seattle listeners will love to hear this. The Seattle jerseys sold out fast, quick, and in a hurry. Most single-day jersey sales in PWHL history, with the inaugural jersey launch on Tuesday. Vancouver was right on their heels. So basically, the Pacific Northwest loves women's hockey, but no surprise to either one of us, Rachel. And we've seen that the Pacific Northwest has shown up for women's hockey, such as the Rivalry Series. And the Rivalry Series will re-up next month in November. We will talk about what we know about the Rivalry Series and the rosters, and also some other women's hockey, international women's hockey adjacent news with an event that's happening in New York City next week. We will get to that and more PWHL news as we continue on with the Women's Hockey Report.
Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've heard them all before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes guys just need a little extra support. And that's where Rougette comes in. Rougette.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougette makes it easy to get started. You just get connected with a board-certified doctor, 100% online. There's no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. Your treatment ships discreetly directly to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit rougette.com/lockedonnhl to get 15% off your first order. That's rougette.com/lockedonnhl. And don't forget to use our code LOCKEDONNHL so they know we sent you. Rougette, stop making excuses and start making moves.
Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at GameTime. Now, listen, we know that the NFL season is here, obviously NHL season, and we've got the Rivalry Series to talk about here. And that's where, you don't want to be worrying about trying to queue things up, surprise fees, prices that jump right before checkout. And GameTime, it helps eliminate all of that. The app gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. Now, one of the favorite features that I use when I'm in the GameTime app, whether I'm looking for concerts, mostly concerts, theater, etc., is that you can see the view from your seat. You don't want to be sitting, awkwardly behind, some kind of pole or pillar or things of that nature. Also have zone deals where you pick the section and GameTime picks your seats and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets, theater tickets, PWHL tickets, etc. with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. All right, we are going to continue on here on the Women's Hockey Report. Rachel Donner is with me. My name, Erica L. Ayala. We also host, respectively, the Locked On NHL and Locked On Flyers show for Rachel, and I am your host of Locked On Kraken. But we meet up here once a week, Rachel, to talk all things women's hockey. And right now, that means the Rivalry Series. We're, just about a week and a half away from the next installment of the Rivalry Series. This is, for those maybe who are not familiar, a basically exhibition kind of mini tournament that is only between the United States and Canada. USA Hockey, Hockey Canada, they put on the Rivalry Series and they go to different cities throughout North America to effectively showcase the either current or maybe future Olympians. And sometimes the Rivalry Series is kind of like a welcome home tour on the back end of an Olympics, but sometimes it serves as another preparation for the Olympics, which of course is more of the case this November. And we do have the rosters, Rachel, for USA Hockey. They announced those earlier in the week, and 30 players overall. And of course, a lot of PWHL representation here. But and we'll get to those names. But to me, Rachel, what stood out is that you have 9 NCAA athletes.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting about the Rivalry Series in an Olympic year, to your point, it is a tune-up for the Olympics. But I think it's also an opportunity for players that maybe haven't made the team before or have been borderline to kind of make their case. And in this particular Olympic cycle, we know that there's some veteran players like Hillary Knight specifically already announced this is going to be her last Olympic cycle. And so there's going to be some turnover after this Olympic cycle. And it's important to have those next players in the queue that you're going to have for the next World Championships and starting the Olympic cycle all over again, right? And so I think the Rivalry Series is a perfect opportunity to fold in some more of those younger players, and let's see what we got, right?
100%. And so some of the names, honestly, Rachel, whether we've been talking about the under tournaments in the last handful of seasons or even some Rivalry Series or other exhibition tune-ups, I think that these are more of the usual suspects among the young and up and coming whippersnappers, right? You've got Caroline Harvey, Lacey Eden, Kirsten Sims, Layla Edwards, Emma Pichelle, Tessa Janicki, Joy Dunn, Ava McNaughton, and Abby Murphy. Now, some of these players we've talked about even when it comes to the PWHL draft and just, how much eligibility they still had in the NCAA, et cetera, et cetera. But again, while these are younger players, they're not inexperienced. However, for a player like Layla Edwards, I'm thinking about in particular, this is the first opportunity that they could have to make an Olympic team. World championships, we've seen some of these names again, even at the senior level, but for some of them, this is their first real chance to make an Olympic team.
Yeah, and it's really funny because I feel like, especially like Abby Murphy and Layla Edwards, I feel like we've been talking about them for years and years and years now, but they're still so young.
So young, yeah.
It is really interesting. And like Kirsten Sims as well, I think is a name that's been around. And I think that the path that is now established in terms of, okay, U18s to college hockey to senior team, that's just kind of how things work now. And so you're going to see more college level players get pulled out of school for these kinds of tournaments because you have to do it that way. That's like the way the structure, because, the PWHL drafts out of college as opposed to before college, like it does with the men. So that's just kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And McNaughton is one of 3 goaltenders. Now, let's talk about the roster maybe more broadly. So not necessarily the usual suspects when it comes to goaltending. It's McNaughton, Gwyneth Phillips, who, we basically stand on this show.
It's true. We do.
I mean, we just got to be honest. And Erin Frankel, I think, is I love using this term. She's kind of the baby vet when it comes to the goalie core here.
She is. And, it is going to be a really interesting decision when it comes to the Olympics for Team USA in particular. I think that, Canada has such a strong goaltending core, and there's been some question marks related to goaltending for Team USA and who really owns the net here. And Frankel has obviously been a huge part of that conversation for several years now. But at Gwyneth Phillips having such a strong season this past year in the PWHL kind of makes a case, for her. And then McNaughton's just kind of along for the ride here to get the experience because, again, I mean, to be honest, like you need to get more goaltenders experience at this elite level of hockey. And so I would not be shocked if we see McNaughton in at least 1, maybe 2 of these 4 games in the series just to get her the ice time in this environment.
Yeah, 100%. And, I do want to just go back quickly to Layla Edwards, and Lee Steckline, friend of the show, has talked about Edwards before. But Layla Edwards listed as a defender when it comes to Team USA, but is usually playing at the NCAA level as a forward. And I think you can think about it 2 ways. One, way to future-proof, young woman, as far as the opportunity to make an Olympic squad, because similarly to what we were talking about with Hockey Canada, I think Team USA, when it comes to their forwards, traditionally, they've been super veteran dominant for a long time. I mean, to the point where, Hillary Knight, we know this is going to be her last Olympics, but also she's been around for quite some time. She was one of the young players that was able to cut her teeth young here. So I think that it's really interesting. And we'll talk about an event coming up next week where we'll probably get to hear from Edwards about making that switch.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because she is the tallest listed player on Team USA's roster.
When Lee Steckline's on the roster.
Right. But, she's listed at 6'1", right? And so honestly, for the international level hockey, best on best, it makes sense for her to play defense. 100%. It really does.
Yeah.
Because you need that reach, you need the physicality. And so I get why she would make a lot of sense as a defender in that environment, but her skill set is so varied that I think, when she's in the pro game, like, let her fly as a forward.
100%. Just absolutely let her cook. But as we've been alluding to, Rachel, will it even matter by the time she becomes a pro as we continue to see, this positionless hockey take flight?
Rovers. We're all Rovers, as I
We all
say
love
each and
Rovers.
every day.
That's it. So again, Rivalry Series, not exactly the same as what we're expecting to see as the Olympic roster, but it certainly is an opportunity to see who's at least being considered. And are there some players that maybe wanted to sit this out, get some rest? I guess we'll find out. But we're still waiting on that hockey Canada. Canada. I'm always slipping over that. Hockey Canada. There we go. We're waiting on that Hockey Canada roster, and we'll talk about some players that we're expecting to see on that roster coming up. But before we move on from the Rivalry Series, let's first let you know what has happened in the past, specifically in the 2024-25 Rivalry Series, and then, of course, how you can follow along this year. So 24-25, Canada took that 3-2. USA gets that opening game, Rachel. We did get 2 shootouts, as is the way between USA and Canada, but ultimately, again, Canada takes the series 3-2.
Yeah, that was a tough one, I gotta say, as an unabashed Team USA supporter here. But, I think that you never know these days if you want, like, your team to win this one and then go into the Olympics, like, on that high, or
right,
and with the momentum, or we fall victim to the, well, if you win in the prelims, you're going to lose in the medal round kind of philosophy.
Yeah.
So I just want everybody to have fun, and for both teams to be able to fine tune their rosters to make them the best they can be.
Have fun, stay healthy, and we'll go from there. So just an update. So not next week, but the week after, Monday, November 3rd, specifically thinking about the Team USA schedule. Team USA will practice on the November 3rd and November 4th in Strongsville, Ohio. And Edwards is one of the players from the Ohio area. They also will have practice on November 5th. So 3 days of practice. And then they will take on Canada at Rocket Arena in Cleveland at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, November 6th. Then the Rivalry Series will move to New York. And on Saturday, November 8th, the 2 national teams will take the ice at KeyBank Center. We are expecting to have one of our contributors to the Women's Hockey Report, who we haven't officially introduced yet, be at that game. So we will be talking Rivalry Series and hope to have a little bit of bonus content for you, especially around the Buffalo game. The last thing I want to mention about kind of national teams, Olympics, thinking of that, is that Team USA is having a summit next week in New York City. They also did this ahead of the Paris Olympics. I think that was the first time that they did an official summit. Usually they hold it around the 100 days mark, which, can you believe it, Rachel? We're coming up on that. It's wild and crazy, especially considering what the ice hockey situation is. But we're going to talk about that on a different episode. But we are going to talk about it and have been talking about it on our respective Locked On shows. Kendall Coyne-Schofield, Hillary Knight, Layla Edwards, and Caroline Harvey are expected to be in attendance. It's for all of Team USA. So that would include, of course, men's ice hockey. There are no active NHLers who will be present, which I think makes sense, Rachel. I mean, we're in the middle of NHL season, so maybe pulling them away would make a lot of sense. But we do know who the first 6 players for each of the men's national teams.
Well, the Kachucks are available, I guess. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, ouch, burn. But there won't be no active NHLers. TJ Oshie will be there. He recently retired. He played for the Caps, but maybe not in those uniforms that we were talking about earlier.
Correct.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think he goes back that far. But TJ Oshie will be there. So I wonder what capacity, if any, he will be contributing with Team USA. So that'll be interesting. But Joe Dabney and I will be boots on the ground there, mostly for Black Rosie Media, because that's my company. And we will be headed to Milano Cortina. But sharing is caring. And since Joe and I are involved with the Women's Hockey Report, the Women's Hockey Report is going to get reporting from the Team USA Summit. And so we will recap that. And again, on the next episode, talk about what is honestly some troubling news with regard to the facilities for ice hockey for the 2026 Olympics in Milano and Cortina, Italy. But Rachel, we have some PWHL news. We have been keeping up with signings, especially draftees signed. We broke all of those numbers down, and we do have some updates. So we'll get into that as we continue on with the Women's Hockey Report. This episode of the Women's Hockey Report also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We know the NHL, NFL season, NBA is back, and it's FanDuel that can make sure that you're ready for your season with can't miss offers. Right now, new customers can bet $5. And if your first $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can look at same game parlays. You can look at player props. I love taking a look at the future bets, like, will the Seattle Kraken make the playoffs? Or at least what do the experts think? And then are they wrong? And you can make some money if they are. But that's a quick, easy, and the best way to add a little energy to your sports watching experience. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com, and you can place your first $5 bet, and if it hits, you get $300 in bonus bets. All right, Rachel, we continue on here with the Women's Hockey Report as part of, again, the Locked On NHL channel and the Locked On Podcast Network. But we are going to talk about some signings. We have been keeping eyes on draftees, and we broke all of that down on the last episode. You can go check that out wherever you listen to audio pods or, of course, on YouTube. But we have some pretty big news, especially when it comes to Montreal. And again, some names that we'll probably see when Hockey Canada does drop their Rivalry Series roster.
Oh, that's for sure. Still no Casey O'Brien, but we'll talk more about the Sirens a little bit later. Yeah, the Montreal Victoire, I think very interestingly and strategically extended all three of their top core players at the same time for 2 additional contract years. They have 1 year left remaining on their deals, like through this upcoming season. So now we have all 3 players locked in for the next 3 seasons for Marie-Philippe Poulin, Laura Stacey, and Anne-Renee Desbiens. And who are the Montreal Victoire without those 3? Probably not the Montreal Victoire, if you got to be honest, at least for the current era of that team. And Marie-Philippe Poulin and Laura Stacey were the top 2 point getters for Montreal, which was the top regular season team in the league. And, everybody suffered an expansion, but when you look at, who they chose to protect, it was a no-brainer, right? It was those 3. And there's a reason why. They were the foundational signings, the players they protected, and now these players are going to be with this team for the next 3 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you don't go wrong, right? This is a no-brainer. We had talked about Marie-Philippe Poulin maybe taking, a team-friendly deal or having some kind of agreement, and we thought maybe that was a way just to reshuffle some resources and assets here. But obviously, the Montreal team, as they should, sees value in keeping this core group together. And we know sometimes that also, once you lock in players like that, it can be somewhat of a recruitment tool if you need it in free agency, when you're thinking about who to draft, things of that nature. So not to mention the practicality of having the 3 of them there to try and run it back for Montreal and see if they can make another deep, but even deeper playoff run, because they're still looking to even get to play for a Walter Cup.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about it is Laura Stacey spoke to the media after the announcement or as part of the announcement. And I think like that's the thing for her that it is weighing on her the most is the fact that they did so much good work in the regular season and then just couldn't get it done in the playoffs. And there's a mission. And I think the three of them share in that joint mission and they are the leaders of this group. And so I think there's a little bit of a redemption arc that they're looking to achieve this year. And I think just having the contract talk out of the way allows them to focus on that.
100%. So, we've already talked about how Montreal, in a lot of ways, when we did our deep dives, which again, you can check out on the Women's Hockey Report playlist as part of the Locked On NHL channel on YouTube. Also, audio listeners, you can find Women's Hockey Report. Just look for the purple logo and icon. That's us. But, we've talked about how they're really trying to like level up in like a explosive way. They're going to take on everything that the league is throwing at them. And I'm very curious to see how it all pans out. But we also got some other signing news and PWHL news.
Yeah, so the Sirens, as aforementioned, still, as of recording, have not signed Casey O'Brien. So we're going to, keep our eyes on that situation there. But they did sign their 4th round pick, Callie Shanahan, to a 1-year deal. Now, she could be the presumptive backup goalie for the Sirens this year. So it was really important that she gets signed for this upcoming season here. But the other interesting situation is with a different draft pick for their 3rd round pick, McKenna Webster from Ohio State, an excellent player. They're going to give her a leave of absence, so to speak, and allow her to pursue field hockey, which she's a 2-sport queen. And so they're going to give her an opportunity to play at the elite level with field hockey, and the Sirens will still have the rights to her a year from now.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, how much of this is it like a financial decision? Is it a once in a lifetime, just want to do it to say I could do it kind of vibe? I think it would be interesting to see what the landscape is when it comes to the PWHL and kind of what the thinking was there. But I also think like kudos to the Sirens for, being flexible in that way. It also could be kind of saw the writing on the wall. We talked about camp invites, things of that nature. I don't know, Rachel, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, she wants to make the USA Olympic team. And I think if she can't let that go, and that's something she wants to do, sports like draft players all the time that end up not playing and they go to pursue other careers in other fields. Like, the baseball draft has like 8,000 rounds to it. Right. So
it's at least 9,000.
Yeah. So it's like those guys, half of them go on to just do other things. And I think it's important for the PWHL to have this amount of flexibility. And I think that, pursuing an Olympic dream, knowing that she's not Olympic level in ice hockey, but she is in field hockey, like it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, 100%. Not to mention that the next Summer Olympics after Milano Cortina, we're just 2 years away from LA 28. We will see how the United States is able to persevere until 2028. But, that's our news here today, Rachel, hockey-wise, before I start talking about other news. And we are going to be back next week. Again, we have the Team USA Summit. I will be keeping a keen eye and ear on if we hear anything from the USA delegation with regard to ice hockey and some of the big question marks that we have about one of the major arenas and facilities that was being built specifically for these Olympics, and that will have a great impact on the women's and men's ice hockey tournament. So we'll get into that next week. And of course, any other news that comes out, we will have it here on the Women's Hockey Report. We also did get news that, Jocks and Jill's season 3, and they are expecting some Olympic coverage. So they will be your second favorite podcast that it has boots on the ground in the Olympics. No shade. Of course, we love what they're able to do, the official PWHL podcast. And I think they've experimented with a lot of ways to give fans immediate access to players even throughout the playoffs. And so I would imagine that they're going to do some of that, which is super cool. We look forward to also being boots on the ground. So if you're not already, make sure you subscribe on audio platforms, but especially follow us on social media, on TikTok, women's_hockey_report, because we are going to have that Olympic coverage for you. We'll have a team that's back in the United States, a team that's on the ground in Italy, and giving you some fantastic coverage. But for Rachel Donner, Erica L. Ayala here, a reminder to go check out Locked On Flyers and go listen to Locked On Kraken as your next listen on this Saturday. And we will catch you next week. Peace out, everybody.